Hey everybody, my name's Josh. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick little video on how to mess around in Fusion 360 to make a lightbox similar to how Shirtle shows you in his tutorial. I did a live presentation for a few folks earlier today, and thank you to those that showed up. Unfortunately, my side boxes didn't show up, which is really weird, and all you could see was pretty much the front. So what I'm going to do is redo this entire thing for you in hopefully a quick, concise manner, so that way I don't lose many of you. Just a little background on me. I've been printing since 2019. I started with an Ender 3 and pretty much dived really deep into it and got my first bamboo printer this year in January. So been using AutoCAD for a little bit. Again, I'm no expert, but figure I can give you guys a little bit more um, in depth to Fusion 360. So we're going to go ahead and make this lightbox in this tutorial and start from scratch. So if you click S on your keyboard, your design shortcuts will show up. If you want to start adding to those, all you have to do is go to the right and click this arrow and it'll show up on your shortcuts for when you push S. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and use these top ribbon here to start doing things. So for those of you that are starting out with Fusion, just so you know, down at your bottom here is your timeline. Now that timeline that you have here will be points in time where you do things to your model. So if I hit sketch, your axes will come up, and what I do is I like to put it on the bottom axis because when it exports into your slicer, it will have it already down on the plate itself. So makes it a little bit easier for me. A lot of these things that I'm telling you, you can do in many different ways. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. So however you see fit and whatever you feel comfortable is the best way to do it. But good habits do help in AutoCAD software. So I'm going to go ahead and start by having the bottom axis chosen for my sketch. Now you see once I get into that sketch, my sketch icon pops up here down in my timeline. That just shows you what you did at that point in time. Now, just like in the other tutorial, I do like to make myself a rectangle, a center point rectangle, starting from the center and creating that 240 by 240. Dependent on your plate size itself, you will choose something different. But this is just so that way I have the constraints of my model inside and I know that I'm not going to exceed the plate that I'm using. So once I have my SVG, depending on if you made it yourself, if you downloaded it online, you're going to come up here to the insert portion and hit insert SVG. Now, when you are creating things in Fusion 360 or other AutoCAD software, I do highly suggest you make yourself your own folders for saving purposes. Just makes it a lot easier to get into later on. So I'm going to go ahead and get my logo here. This is for a local high school here in town. Um, I ended up making ornaments for them for their football team, but decided to make them a light box for the head coach as well. So now that we have this here, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK because it's in the constraints, and I do want to take into consideration those offset lines that we're going to create. So another thing that you want to kind of focus on is having everything in concise segments in your timeline. So instead of creating the sketch and having the box and then hitting OK and then coming up here and hitting insert SVG, if I would have done that, it would have created another part in my timeline, and I really want to get everything focused in my timeline. So now I'm still in this sketch. Now that I have my constraints already set, I know that my offsets are going to be good. What I actually do is I start deleting my outside boxes because I don't want to start extruding something and end up having those constraints of the outside extruded as well by accident. Again, you can keep that in there if you'd like. It's not a big deal if you don't. But while we're still here in this first sketch, I'm going to go ahead and hit the offset button up here above the modify tab. So once I'm here, I go ahead and click this outside line. Now you have two options. You can either go positive or negative. That red line is going to be the offset. So if I hit 5 right now, it's going to bring 5 meters inside of the model. And I hit 5 twice, so it's going to say 55 by accident. Now my computer's trying to catch up. All right, so now you see it, that's here. Now I can just go to the front and hit a -5, so it comes out to the other side. Or if I want to go ahead and be more mechanical, I can keep it with the 5 and I can hit this flip option here and it does it for me. So whichever way you'd like to do it. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go ahead and hit O on my keyboard because if you're going to go up to the ribbon every time, that's fine. But also the set key command for offset is going to be O. And when you drop down these menus, you'll go ahead and see those command shortcuts as well. So if I hit O, I'm going to click that outside line one more time. And because I know that the red line is which way it's going to go, I'm going to start by hitting -7.5. Hit OK. Going to hit that O one more time. And we're going to do a -10 on this one. Now again, for this tutorial, we're just doing the same kind of concept that Shirtle was doing because it was a great tutorial to show. And I figure you can follow both along with this one and that one if you need to. So I'm going to hit OK. Now that we have all of our lines here, one of the things that I'd like to do is look at my picture on another screen or the same screen depending on how you want to do it. But just so that way when we do start extruding these colors, I have it in clear sight. So this is what I'm basing it off of. Again, like I said, this was an ornament, so I did this a little bit different. You'll see that there's a hole in the top of this ornament, which was great for Christmas, but with a light box, I want to make sure that that gets covered, so that way there's not just white light shining through. So we're going to go ahead and make this back plate first. So just like I told you, there are shortcut commands already for your keyboard, and extrude is going to be E. So when I hit extrude, I'm going to choose this entire object. Now everything is highlighted in blue. Just like you were shown in the other video, what we want to do is start this away from the actual sketch that it's going to. So we're going to do an offset here. Now when you do your offset, you can see that right now it's going to be straight off of the sketch. But if we do a negative offset, and I say negative because this arrow is right here going to the left. If I do a -40 millimeters, it pushes itself behind the light box. So now I'm going to go ahead and distance this about 2 millimeters. Now you can see that it creates this body offset from the sketch. Now it's going to create itself as a new body because there's nothing that is extruding around. It's not extruding around anything and it's not connecting anything to another body since nothing else has been created. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Now once you have a body in Fusion, your sketch goes away. So you have your options here for the things that you're creating, like your bodies, your sketches, your origin. I'm going to show you guys the analysis here in a little bit, but now that you have your first body here, what I like to do is rename stuff. So this is going to be my back plate, right? That way I know this body is my back plate. So we're going to go ahead and extrude again, because we're going to create that rim that fits into the front piece of your light box. So we're going to turn this sketch back on. Don't be afraid if you don't see it, because like I said, it will hide your sketch because it thinks that you're just going to start working on this body here. So we're going to go to the second inmost line here. And instead of doing an offset and trying to figure out how much distance and how far we got to go, what we're going to do at the start is go from an object. So this object is going to be this back plate here. Now if you choose this side, it's going to do it off this side. If you choose this side, it'll do it off this side. So you're going to go ahead and choose the side that's going to be facing towards the front plate. And now that you're starting off of this object, you can go ahead and type your distance in. So I'm just going to do 3 millimeters, nothing too crazy. Again, with the other tutorial, it shows the LEDs being being placed on the front side of the light box. For this, we're going to do the same, but for myself, I've seen some others use the back plate as the holder for the LEDs. So they may be using 8mm wide LED strips. So they may make their back ring about 9mm. So that way they can lay that itself in there. But we'll go ahead and continue like I said, so that way you can use both of these tutorials the same. Now, the operation is going to be a join. You don't want to do a new body because you want this all to be one piece. So we'll go ahead and keep it as a join and hit OK. So for right now, we do not need this back plate anymore. So we will in a minute, and I'll show you when, but for now, we can just go ahead and exit the back plate. Now we're back to having just our sketch here. Okay. If for some reason you're fixing lines, doing something like this inside of Fusion and you don't want to have to keep scrolling in and out, if you double click your mouse wheel, it'll bring the entire object into view itself. So there's a little thing for you there. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at my colors because I want to do my next extrusion as the same colors, all in the same color. So we're going to go ahead and hop back here, hit extrude. Now, I want my entire front face to be yellow. So these offset lines will also stay yellow, as well as the actual sign itself. Now, you can do these as black if you'd like. You can do them however you want. Just depends on what you're actually doing in there. So I'm going to go ahead and start selecting. Now, I'm not doing anything but clicking these. Now, if you are not in your extrude command, if you click on one section of the sketch and then click on another, the last section that you just clicked on will go away. So be sure to be mindful about where you're clicking and what operation you're doing. So again, I'm just clicking all of my objects that are going to be yellow here in my lightbox. And we're going to go ahead and extrude that. Again, you see this arrow coming forward, so I want it to go backwards. If you want it to go forwards, that's fine too. However you want to do it. I just like my profile plane to be where it's at, where we started off. So I'm going to do negative 0.6 millimeters. It's going to go ahead and do itself as a new body. Hit OK. Now, one of those things that I was talking about with habits, right? So we're going to go ahead and click the top one, click the bottom one with a shift click, and we're going to rename these as yellow, maybe with 1O. Now, we were shown that you can go ahead and highlight all these, hit V to make them disappear and reappear, but if you right click on your bodies folder, you can create a new group. Now, in that new group, I want to make this yellow. The reason why I do this is because if I grab all of these yellows and put them in here, I don't have to select everything in here anymore to hide them and unhide them. I can just hit this eyeball and it'll go away. So now I know that I'm going to be doing a blue group as well. So I'm going to make another one just for future to be blue. So now that we have this going, let's go ahead and get the blue. We're going to go extrude again. Select here, select these. And if you see, I have a little dot here that I don't want to be any other color, so I'm going to select that one too. You can in your sketch delete that if you'd like. Probably easier and something that I should have done, but it's an easy fix this way here. So negative 0.6. That's what happens. All right, so negative 0.6. Now, you can see that this is trying to join itself to the other bodies that you've extruded. I don't want that because it's a different color. So we're going to go ahead and select new body here and hit OK. So now we have these bodies here that are going to be renamed blue. If I take these blue and I throw them in the blue folder, same thing as before. I can hide it, bring it back up. Now, I talked about it earlier, and I still didn't do it. This section here is messed up because I didn't extrude it with the yellow. Now, all I have to do is come back to the yellow portion that I extruded, and when you highlight the timeline itself, it shows you what objects you were messing with in that timeline. So all I have to do is double click on that extrusion. You're going to see it load up all the pieces that I extruded before, and all I have to do is click in here, and it will add that section of the sketch to the already extruded parts. So I hit OK, and we're still here. So your front is done. Now we need to connect the front to the back, kind of. So what we're going to do is bring this back plate up, go ahead and bring this sketch back up, and we want this outside line to go all the way back to the back plate. So we're going to hit extrude one more time. We're going to go ahead and click on the outside sketch, and what we're going to do is the start will be the profile plane, and the distance instead will be to object. And we're going to go over this again here in a little bit, but the to object, you can click where you want it to extrude to. So if I click here, because it's going through that front plate, it's going to say cut. But what I want is to join this. Now, the reason why I want this to join is because I want it to be part of the front plate, right? Now, before I hit OK, if I were to hit join right now, it's going to join that back plate to the front plate, and we don't want that. The easiest way to not have that happen is turn off your back plate. Now, it still does the same amount of distance. It still joins this rim to this front plate, and it does not connect to the back plate, but has the same distance. So we're going to hit OK. Turn off your sketch. Now you can see that you have your entire front plate here, and your back plate is still its own separate body. So one thing that I was talking about with the section analysis, by the way, you're done here in creating, unless you want to make your hole for the LED outlet. Now, this was a great thing that Cheryl showed, was that you have to make sure that you aren't getting into the hole as close as where you had that lip. So what we're going to do is if we go ahead and create a sketch, right, it's going to ask us what axis we want to put our stuff on, but I want to make it here because it is a flat piece of the body. And so what I'm going to do is click this here. Of course, it comes to the center. And one thing that Shirtle showed, which was fantastic, was making kind of a marker to show where your stuff is. Now, we have this thing called a construct line, construction line, construct line. Now, when I click on this, whatever I make next has really no bearing on whether I'm going to extrude something, whether I'm going to cut something, because it's just a line for reference. So I'm going to go ahead and hit L for line. I know we've been using the icons up here, but I'm going to go ahead and hit L. Now, Fusion's pretty smart. Fusion knows where your lines are. So if you're moving up and down, it's actually telling you, hey, there's a line back here. Just a heads up. Don't put anything there, or if you're going to start something on that same section, that there is a line behind here. So I'm going to just go ahead and put a point right there, and then bring it down here. So I know that when I make my rectangle, my circle, whatever it is, I can't go below this line because it'll show me that it's here. Now you do want to turn the construction line off, because when you do your next objects, it's going to make a construction line if you don't. So I'm going to go ahead and create a rectangle, just a 5x7, doesn't matter. And you'll see that when you make that, you still have the rectangle icon at the bottom right of your cursor. To get out of that, just go ahead and hit the escape button, and now you have control of your mouse again. So another thing that I like to do, because I do make things other than this stuff, and even though our printers are really great and this is a very small overhang that you can do, I do like to fillet the edges to make it not so sharp and to make a nice curve to those 90-degree angles. So above modify, there's the fillet tab here. I'm just going to click into these corners, and all that warning shows is that constraints were removed. When you're making constraints on your objects, it's good to have constraints because it kind of tells your object what you're doing. So I'm just going to leave it at 1 millimeter, hit enter there, and now I have a little hole that's not going to hit my edge of the back plate either. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this sketch just so I can show you guys something pretty neat here. You have what's called an analysis tool. If you go to inspect and you hit section analysis, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this plane so I can cut my entire model. Now this doesn't do anything but show you what it would look like if that part of the model was gone. You can see your tolerances here in between the two parts of the model. And what's nice is what I'm going to do next is I'm going to extrude the rectangle here to this part of the body so that way you can actually run your LEDs in. So if I hit extrude, I click this rectangle. Now I could, if I wanted to, just rip it back, right? Rip it, cut it, and there's the hole. But what I want to do, because like we were talking about, good habits are a good thing to come by, is I want my distance to be a 2 object. So I'm going to go ahead and click the back side of the area that we're going to cut it to, and I'm going to hit OK. Now the reason that I do that is because if I were to cut this 2 millimeters to the back, or 3 millimeters to the back, but I needed to make this part of the object 5 millimeters, what's going to happen is I'm going to have to go back into my extrusion portion on the timeline and have to make that even larger. But if I were to go ahead and do the 2 object and hit the back of this body, no matter how large I make this body, this extrusion is going to stick with it to be the exact same size because it's extruding to the back of this object. So there's that. Now, again, double click. I want my entire thing to be into the picture. And when you make an analysis, it shows it here. So you can turn it off and turn it on just like you can with your bodies in sketches. So now that I have everything, I have my hole, I have my front plate, I have my back plate, I'm going to go ahead and, well, first we'll save it. Now you always want to save, you always want to make sure that you're saving throughout, but initially you should be saving your project first before you really start even doing anything. So now that we're here, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my back plate. Because a lot of us are using bamboo slicers, we can keep these yellow and blue live. Right click here, save as mesh. We're going to go ahead and make it a 3MF, high refinement because you want it to be looking good, and we're going to hit OK. So tester version 1, but we're going to say front plate. Now I'm going to save this in my testing folder and go ahead and hit save. Right? Now, just like we did with the colors, I'm going to go ahead and save the back plate. So we'll make sure that the back plate's visible, turn off the colors, save this as a mesh, 3MF as well, and then tester V1 back plate. So we're going to hit OK. So now that you have those files saved, I got a print going right now. We're going to go ahead and clear these out. Now, from your tester folder, let's see, there we go. So we got my front plate here. I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this here. It's going to ask you, hey man, there's a bunch of things with multiple objects, multiple parts. Do you want to load it as one file? Yeah, absolutely, because we have a bamboo printer and it knows better. So the reason why I named those colors is you can see here, all I have to do is click the first one, click the end, hit number 6, and because number 6 on my filament is yellow, it's going to make this yellow. So now that I have that there, I can go ahead and put my front onto the plate because we don't want to have it above and have a bunch of support material. And here you go. This is how you can print it. Now, one thing that I do as well, I don't want my entire box to be yellow. All I want is for this to be illuminated. It doesn't matter. They're not going to care about what the, hopefully they're not going to care what the side is. But again, these are your customers, so however they want to do it, they can do it. But if I select this model and I hit the paint bucket, there's an option here for height range. Now, number 8 is my black. I put the height range as high as I can, and what I do is I kind of make this at an angle so I can see both on this side and this side where I'm painting. And if I click and I hold and I drag all the way up, I now have a black backing. So if you have a little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue, this isn't going to take up too much of your filament. I myself, I have rolls on rolls of black filament. So it's something that's super expendable for me for the other objects that I make that I sell. And yeah, so this would be it. Now, one thing that I do notice is a lot of people like to look at other people's profiles, and profiles are great on Maker's World with bamboos. They're really easy to just click and use, but in my time in 3D printing, I learned that not everything's the same. People are using different filaments, people are printing in different climates, people are printing just in different scenarios where somebody may have a higher humidity in their area or temperature in their workspace, so they're going to have their stuff set up a little bit differently. Now, one of the best pieces of advice that I learned in 3D printing when I started was you're going to fail. You're going to, but you're going to learn from that failure and you're going to keep going. So as long as you keep going, you keep testing, you're going to get these right. I think I printed about 4 of these before I made sure that there were no pinholes, there was no overlap, my flow ratio was good. So one of the things that I do want to tell you guys that I do myself is I create my presets. So I have plaques. These are plugs that I make, keychains, a bunch of other stuff. But for my plaques, it worked really well with these light boxes. So in my first layer height, I do 0.16. Again, everybody's going to be different. It might work for you, it might not. I do the 0.32 line width for my first layer. Arachne, of course, I think that's one of the things that everybody should be doing for these to make sure that their lines look super great. There was a post earlier that I saw that somebody saw their infill material in their light box. I don't even want to deal with that. So what I do is I make sure that my bottom shell layers are enough to cover the bottom that I need. So this is probably going to be at 3-4 layers high. I use 6 layers and 6 layers. Again, that's personal preference. I think it looks great. And for the wall loops, I do 3. Why? I don't know. I just like 3. The infill wall overlap percentage, I do 25%. I really don't understand why Bamboo puts it at 15%. I had terrible bridging with some cheek risers that I make for rifle stocks, and I've just always been at 25%. Another thing that I do to try and help mitigate wisps is I make my first layer at 30 millimeters per second. I think that it really helps in not jerking the head away with filament still attached to it. It lets it drop enough, but that's me. Now, I never use a brim. A brim's just going to add more. It's going to add more post-processing to you as well. So again, that's something if you want to do it, that's totally fine. But if not, hey, that's okay too. Now, the other thing is for those not using Bamboo printers, instead of going and saving your mesh as a 3MF, you want to go ahead and save it as an STL. So unfortunately, I don't have too much experience with multicolor printing with STLs, and I hope I can learn something so I can put it in a later video. One last thing, the reason why we make our timeline so concise and so neat is because when we do changes for our objects, say we were to print this and you realize that these edges just are not great for laying an LED strip. So you want something more smooth, something more concise. What you can actually do is go ahead and head to your first sketch here, and in that sketch, you do still have the option to fillet. Now, if I were to take these sharp points and say, hey, you know what? I want to fillet this to make it easier for an LED to go through. I'm going to hit Finish Sketch. And what that's going to do is it is going to change not only that sketch, but it's going to change everything else that I did past that point in that timeline. So now you see that I filleted this. Now this inside is also filleted, and you'll see that the inside is also filleted as well. So that's just some tips for you guys with Fusion. Again, if you guys have any questions or comments, I do have a Discord that you guys can join. I work from home as an IT project manager, so I have time to help out if you guys need it. All right, thanks.